All right. Well, welcome to the Clean Power Hour live, June 9th. I'm Tim Montague, your host. You can find all of our content at cleanpower.group/podcast. Please give us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Check out our YouTube channel. You might be watching us on our YouTube channel. We do this live every Thursday or most Thursdays at 10:45 Central, 11:45 Eastern. And we have a lot of good news. The big story today that we're going to talk about before I introduce my co-host is the Defense Production Act has been invoked by the Biden administration in combination with putting a pause on the tariff case, which was causing a lot of grief for our industry. So some really good news to talk about today with my co-host and colleague, commercial solar guy, John Weaver. Welcome to the show, John.
Timothy, it is a big thing. And Biden has chosen to take a stand on a certain item, and it's going to affect stuff, I hope. So good item to start chatting with this week, Tim, at least for the bigger industry. The Defense Production Act. That means, in my mind, solar is defined as a national security item, requirement, something.
Yes.
And that's
Not
cool.
only solar, but storage and electrolyzers and heat pumps are all called out now in these initiatives. And that is a very important, we need five things, right? We need wind, solar, batteries, electrolyzers, and heat pumps out the wazoo.
Okay, there you go. That's it. Yeah. I was wondering what you said your five items would be, and I was like, oh, okay, there you go. I like that. Yeah,
Five is a good number.
yeah. I mean, I wonder about what this means for the Defense Production Act. From what I've read, it's that yes, these items are on the list, and now this list has been created and put out there in the public. However, from what I've been told, is that it still has to be approved by the Senate to spend the money here. And I think that's probably going to be a challenge, or it might be given an amount of money that might not do as much as we want to do. So there's that. So there's still politics behind this. So it's not an executive order that leads to, bam, here's a thing that's happening. And then the second item is, how much? How much solar? How many solar panels? How much batteries? How much capacity?
Yeah.
Are we going to do 20 gigs worth? Are we going to aim for 50% of whatever we think will be deployed? Or are we going to aim for 100% of what we think the United States might want to deploy? And that's interesting. I ran some super rough numbers, and if we were to start building, I think like 30 gigs worth of solar per year in the U.S. solar panels, it might be close to 100,000 jobs. So, we could fully supply more than we've ever installed for 100,000 jobs. Probably a little less, but close enough. And our peak number of employees for the broader industry was about 230,000, and that was like our peak year of installing. And I think like 80% of those jobs were labor to install. So let's say 200,000 for labor. So it would take us 200,000 to install, 100,000 to make the panels. And if we had 30 gigs, we'd probably be up to 250,000 people doing installation labor. So it's just an interesting set of numbers, especially with the political backdrop of what's going on with U.S. jobs versus Chinese manufacturing, and how the pushing back and forth goes. It's a challenge in our industry because we're in the midst of a political thing, which is part of the reason I'm in the industry, because I like politics. So just layers and layers and layers of considerations still to go.
Yeah, there's probably more questions than answers, but I want to revisit your comment that this is a national security issue. When world powers like China have set course to clean their grid and green their economy by, say, 2050, they don't have all the ups and downs and gyrations that we have because they have a command and control economy in a way that we do not have. And when you can make electricity for half or a third the cost using renewables, that frees up resources to do other things like build an AGI that could be used as a weapon against us, right? And this is a resource race that we humans are in. I don't think we're in a race with ourselves. We still, the species thinks it's in a race with itself. We're actually in a race with the great filter to get off of Earth before the big rock comes and snuffs us out, if we don't nuke ourselves first. But in any event, national security, in the next 50 to 100 years, this is a very serious national security issue and a resiliency issue because climate change is starting to kick our butts, and that's going to get worse before it gets better. And of course, the energy transition is a key answer to solving that challenge, perhaps. So yeah, it's a very serious issue. And what's frustrating for me, John, is that it is still very hard to convince C&I customers here in the Midwest. We have lots of huge manufacturing plants, lots of huge logistics facilities, ginormous warehouses that could be solarized, and only a tiny, tiny fraction of facility owners are even considering this. And when I talk to them, they scratch their head like, how does this work? What is this? Is this real? They just don't understand it. And it's a shame because they're missing out on huge savings and being part of the solution, right? And it's just still a very uphill battle in the Midwest. Now, if it's different, I'm sure, in California. I don't know. You tell me, John. How easy is it to sell C&I solar on the East Coast?
Well, I mean, I have fewer people asking whether it's real. It's still a challenge. I mean, it's every conversation is still tough, but at least I don't have people asking whether it's real. In the Northeast, the benefit we have is that there's a lot of volume deployed on CNI rooftops, and there's a lot of people who are saving money from their rooftops. So
Right.
when you got a neighbor who's doing it, it really helps you, or at least a bunch of neighbors who are doing it, it really helps you. So having state incentives and expensive electricity really helps to move the product along. So I'm sure it's easier up here than it is in the Midwest to sell rooftop solar to a CNI guy.
And we've certainly seen this in the residential market now in Illinois, that we had this first wave starting in 2017, and now it's starting to go mainstream for consumers, and at least you can see those facilities and you can start to see the community solar farms that are popping up. But we still have a long ways to go. And what most Americans don't know is that we're 10 years behind. The Chinese and the Northern Europeans have gone harder, faster after this, using our technology. We invented this stuff, and yet they're benefiting more from it than we are. So that's one of the reasons why we do this show, is to inspire more people to drill down on this. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's not perfect. There's many bumps, and we have this expression, the solar coaster, for a reason. But it is a great opportunity. It's a great economic wealth transfer opportunity. Some people estimate $100 trillion growth opportunity, the clean energy transition. When we electrify transportation, electrify heavy industry, and electrify building space conditioning, That's a lot of technology that needs to be deployed. We now have the technology. We just need to deploy it. If we don't do that, it's going to cost us. I think Deloitte. We referenced last week this Deloitte report. Deloitte estimated like $170 trillion is what climate change is going to ding us versus the goods that we could get if we tackle the problem head on. Um,
Well, there's two items there. One, 170 trillion. That's if modern economics still exists at the point where climate change really starts to hurt us. And yeah, so there's that. I mean, everybody who says, yeah, the solar panels cost a lot. Yeah, well, global civilization is worth a lot. So, if you guys start telling me this is just a straight up Q1, Q2 financial report, I'm going to respond and tell you to go stick it, because this is about the species existing. It's not about quarterly returns. And so there's that. So, I like seeing these reports because they quantify stuff, but then immediately after I read the number, I'm like, yeah, we're still quantifying 50-50 human civilization existing. So there's a mental challenge there, because if we don't do climate change and we manage climate change and we start to see the cost, we're at like, oh, it's 50 trillion. Oh, I guess we can manage that. Oh, it's 70 trillion, 100 trillion. Well, we just lost, quarter of the Earth's population because temperatures are now 2.5 degrees up. But the economy is only 20% down. So I guess we're okay. That's the kind of the angle that I hear, and it's like, and I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, overestimating, and I hope I'm wrong by X percentage, and it only hurts us a tiny bit when it comes to civilization and humanity. But we're moving in a weird place, a different
yeah,
place. And another item regarding the defense procurement, China has a chance to make it so they are not affected by oil, coal, and gas embargoes. That, from a national defense standpoint, is probably scarier for the U.S. military than anything else. Because if a country can completely and totally act independently of all world markets, I mean, on one hand, that's great. It means we're just like, hey, finally we can be a pure, honest country. But if somebody doesn't have any motivation to act responsibly, quote unquote, in the world markets, then military types should be like, wow, we have no leverage over these guys. We can't just put a bunch of boats around them and then make them, step up their actions. And so I think this defense aspect of this conversation is really, really interesting. Homegrown electricity, homegrown energy independence, constant big item talked about. And I'd like to see countries start to take on solar as a way to defend against embargoes for energy. And if so, we're lucky. I mean, if people start buying electric cars, solar panels, wind turbines, once the hardware is delivered, it's going to work. It's not like oil where you have to get a new shipment every single day of the week. It just works. So, China's known for planning very long and thinking about a lot of things and pushing when they see an opportunity. And I wonder where the military intellectuals have gone with this concept of fully homegrown electricity generation, electric cars, which removes them from the need to buy oil. And very interested in that. I like to watch it.
and that brings me to the military, which is one of the earliest adopters of renewable energy and microgrids, right? The US military is very interested in renewable energy because if you set it up, it doesn't need a fuel convoy bringing the fuel to make the facility work. And so I have a question for you, and this is from Cameron McDonald, who's
Ooh.
has a question about Bitcoin mining. Do you think about Bitcoin mining, the energy usage of it, and applications of these facilities relative to the grid?
I mean, I do definitely myself think about Bitcoin mining. I like coins. I like the concept of them. I was Bitcoin mining. I was one of those people that was Bitcoin mining when they were $4, and then I was spending my Bitcoins on coffee for my girlfriend, and so I'm one of those guys that has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bitcoins that I sold for like $50. So there's that. But this is back in 2011.
So you were
However,
early in and early out.
yeah, early in, early out. Yep, yep.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
So, the
but Bitcoin.
controversy, there's a controversy around Bitcoin mining, right? Elon Musk has been in the news about this. These are server farms basically that consume a lot of electricity to mine Bitcoin. Cryptocurrency, I think, is here to stay, and how we get that electricity and how we make that economy work, so to speak, is a question. I think that it's clear that we need to figure out less energy intensive ways to make that economy work. And yes, you can power those facilities with renewable energy, and that is definitely a phenomenon that I've seen developers de- developing these server farms and then developing renewable energy projects in proximity to them, and that's all well and good. But I don't know that there's a particular angle for the crypto community to say, "Hey guys, we've got this amazing grid tool or utility in a server farm." Server farms can be ramped up and down, but I'm
But
pretty
are they going to be though? That's the question I have.
yeah.
Because are they gonna? Because that equipment's expensive, and they need to make their money. And can we have a low capacity factor Bitcoin farm? Can we have machines that only run 20, 30, 40% of the time to do their hashing? I don't know that. You'd have to run the numbers on the hardware costs, and I would bet that the market's pretty efficient and beats the heck out of the pricing, and maybe makes it so you can't run capacity factors below whatever percentage and still be financially viable. So that's the question. People. There's a few items I've heard people say, "Oh, Bitcoin will make it so you can integrate more renewables because we can scale the Bitcoin up and down, and that means you can just keep installing and we can just keep putting Bitcoin next to it." Well, I don't know about that one. First off, Bitcoin people, and I've had them solicit me before, they won't sign PPAs beyond 1, 2, 3 years. So there's that. If you're not going to sign a deal more than 3 years, then I'm not selling you a solar project. It's just not how the bank is going to do it.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. Second, Bitcoin is not a battery. I don't know if you've heard this phrase, but Bitcoin as a battery is an incorrect statement. What they're saying is that they can manage their own load by going up and down. It's like, for instance, you can't get electricity out of a Bitcoin that's on a microgrid that it transferred in from somewhere else, even if it has internet. So, I mean, Bitcoin's not a battery. So anybody who says Bitcoin is a battery, I'm just going to ignore them initially, unless they're really clever and they can figure out how to do that. So there's Bitcoin's not a battery. Go away. Bitcoin or other coins that are better and more energy efficient. So there are other coins that use relatively no energy compared to Bitcoin. And if they were to ever catch on like Bitcoin, then that'd be significant. I think Ethereum is very low energy, and there are others that are even lower energy, like they're designed for low energy. So we can hypothetically get a blockchain and get a coin that is not, heavy electricity demand. Whether we can do that with Bitcoin on the main trunk of code, I don't know, because I don't know enough about Bitcoin. But it takes a lot of work to do that hashing and verify transactions. So I like Bitcoin. I think it's cool. Looks like Texas is about to have a major problem with it. It looks like they're going to go from like 2 gigs of Bitcoin generation demand up to like 5 gigs of demand of electricity, and that's not trivial. That's 3.5% of their electricity peak. So, it's not going away. I love Bitcoin, and it's not going away, but I don't know what's going to happen with it. It's complex.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about the Midwest Solar Expo. This is a wonderful, smaller conference happening in Minneapolis, June 20th, 22nd. MidwestSolarExpo.com is the website. I will be moderating several panels there. I'm going to have a great conversation with Logan O'Grady on stage. He is the executive director of Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association, about the status of the Minnesota market. If you're a developer, financier, manufacturer, EPC working in the Midwest, you want to join us June 20th to 22nd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And a shout out to Jake Rosemarin at Antenna Media for creating that event. I think it's in its 7th or 8th year this year. And great networking. It's a full event. There's a trade show, there's educational sessions, there's NABCEP sessions, and the Midwest is on fire. We have lots of corn and bean fields that would be better off being solar fields, better for the landowners, better for the land, and better for the residents of the Midwest. And so that transition is happening. And we only need 1% to 2% of the land, so don't worry, we're not going to pave over the breadbasket. Let's move on, though, and talk about PV Magazine and John Weaver. What do you got in store for us? What?
Wait, we forgot to talk about tariffs.
Oh, yeah, the tariffs. What tariffs? You kid. Surely you jest.
2-year step back on tariffs. So now you said it better at the beginning. Actually, it's not that the tariffs were gotten rid of. There's a 2-year grace period where you, during the decision-making process of the Department of Commerce, there will be no retroactive tariff applicable to any modules that are imported. And that's pretty good. That's actually pretty great. Hopefully there's going to be a massive volume of modules that start moving across the oceans right now.
Yeah, you're referring to modules made in Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam that
Yes.
have been put on hold, basically, and caused a price shock in the industry, which just puts projects on hold because a little company called Oxen Solar decided to wreak havoc and argue that, oh, well, these companies are using Chinese-made solar cells or polysilicon wafers, and they could be right, but we get 70% of our product from those countries, and if we stop getting that product, we don't have an industry. And the interesting factoid that came out this week or last was, I think this was in Canary Media, that 67% of solar jobs are in development and construction. You know, manufacturing is a small piece here in the U.S. Now, could we ramp that? And we were talking about the Defense Production Act. Of course, we could ramp that. That takes CEOs and boards deciding to reshore or onshore their manufacturing jobs. And the U.S. isn't very good at that lately. Do we want to and need to? Yeah, we definitely want to and need to do that. Those are high-paying jobs, high skill, high wage. So, anything else about the tariffs you want to say?
It's just a headache. It's a hassle to watch. I hope we do something smart, and I don't, I'm not confident that we're gonna get this tax credit extension or the SEMA solar energy manufacturing tax credits either, because it doesn't look like politics likes it. I'm not certain though. We'll see. But at least not having the tariffs won't whack us, which is great. So
Well,
now
this
at
is a
least I
nice
can.
segue. You wrote a story in PV Magazine. U.S. utility scale solar sets record, breaks 50 gigawatts of instantaneous generation. What is the story that you wrote, and why? Well, we're going to talk about uh, the industry trends, right? Utility versus CNI versus residential. But what's the story here on utility record?
50 gigawatts of generation instantaneous, combining the supermajority of utility scale generation in the lower 48. And it's just cool because it's a number that's big, fat, and round. 50,000. Um, and if you do look at this electric power monthly tool, it gives you a breakdown every hour across the United States, who's generating what electricity, what source, and sum all these numbers. And actually, a gentleman on Twitter, and I look at this tool occasionally. I just never noticed a 50 gigawatt number, but a gentleman on Twitter, Joe Dealey, he specifically pointed it out. He goes, "Look at this on Sunday at 4 p.m., which is kind of cool, 4 p.m. Eastern time, which is really the peaking time of the Western markets, which is where the majority of the solar is still. But Texas is going to start to wobble that number, maybe pull it forward to 2:30 p.m. But we just peaked at 50 gigawatts AC of output there you go, at that time. And that was well, actually, the image you're showing is a different one. The one right above it is the one for 50%. Yeah, that one right there. So 50. That was the first time we were above 50. And that's our peak generation. And it's roughly, I think I say right below, about 9.3-ish% of all electricity generation. And while writing this article, a gentleman named Jason O'Leary at PV Intel, he pointed out that for the first time, it looked like in March we had more than 10% of our electricity coming from solar. And since then, it's happened like 60, 70 times. So we're right at that point where instantaneously more than 10% of our energy is coming from solar. And that's cool because a lot of people once suggested that solar would destabilize the grid and you couldn't get beyond, I don't know, very low numbers. But
Yeah.
solar at 50%, solar at 50 gigs. Now, real quick, one caveat. This doesn't include Alaska, doesn't include Hawaii, though the number wouldn't show up at the peak time because their peak would be later in the day. But more importantly, it doesn't include CNI, residential, behind the meter, and maybe some small community solar product. So rough estimation, very rough estimation. Add another 20 to 25 gigawatts of peak capacity at that time. And so we were probably at the 70 to 75 gigawatt number. But this is the one we actually have real data on that's trackable and everything. So just cool big fat number.
What's interesting to me is that what we see here is that solar and wind are now major players on the grid. For reference, coal is 94 gigawatts and nuclear is 91. And so solar getting to 50 is knocking on that door, and wind is at 44. So, we're shuttering coal plants. We were converting coal to natural gas. Natural gas is the big kahuna. That's 188. And now we're shuttering coal and replacing it with wind, solar, and storage. And we're just going to see those dominoes continue to fall. And it's a combination of things, but largely economics, policy, economics, saving money. We humans, we like to save money.
We do. Next story.
New York Senate passes Build Public Renewables Act.
Build Public Renewables. Very interesting act. And it's actually passed a while ago. What this is, well, is that the public renewables? Okay, so technically this is a different one than I wanted to bring up. I wanted to bring up one of my articles. But this is an interesting one too, and it's very closely related. So my article that I wrote, and this one's by Sylvia, um, had the it was showing off that NYSERDA is developing solar power products, and NYSERDA is the New York State Energy Department, and it's very interesting that a state department is doing the early stages of project development and then auctioning the projects to contractors. So NYSERDA will go through all of the challenges of a project. And, construction's a challenge too, of course. But all the development challenges, they'll get zoning approval, they'll get interconnection, they'll get, all these different documents that we fight for, and then sell the project off. Sort of like, a solar developer just selling their project at NTP. And now, though, the government is doing it. And that's interesting because, well, one, it's going to get more volume deployed. So there's that. We want to see as much volume deployed. But it's interesting to see the state get involved because generally building energy resources is a private market thing. So it's like, well, cool. You guys are doing development. Now you're going to sell it to us. Now, the actual article that you saw, the Empire State doing solar public voting for public stuff, that's even a further step than this. That legislation gave the state of New York the ability to build their own power plants, sell the electricity to state units, state utilities, and then also have the ability to sell electricity to low-income folks. So we're literally seeing the state suggest that they themselves are going to be the builder or going to be the developer and the builder of solar power projects. And that's different. It's different. For one, I, as a solar developer / salesman, am scared. So I'm like, the New York State might steal my projects. But then I, as a human being that wants to see the world progress, just fine with it. Get at it, New York. Do your building. We need you. So it's just interesting to watch. A state of New York is getting into solar.
Yeah, as we've mentioned many times on the show, New York is a bellwether state for clean energy and energy conservation. And there is no better state energy organization than NYSERDA. And so if you're interested in the energy transition, go to New York, follow what's going on there. They have a great community solar program. They have residential solar. They have residential solar and storage, and lots of green building initiatives. So
they do have a lot going on. They have expensive electricity and also challenging code requirements in the city as well. So many, many variables. But the state is pushing, no questions asked.
And I mean, New York is a great example of good government and the way government and private sector can interact and feed off one another to bolster an industry. There's a lot of energy companies based in New York, partially because New York is a financial center, but also because of NYSERDA and their policies and their willingness to create a positive playing field for the clean energy industries. So do you want to talk about the Solar Market Insight Report from SEIA? I feel like this is good, but it does overlap with some of the other stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, we'll go quick on this one. I just wanted to point out an item. Q1 was actually very tough for the solar industry because of the tariffs. And so total volume installed was actually down. And we had the lowest quarter since 2020. Q1 is also always the lowest quarter, but this one was a specifically low quarter. It was heavily dependent upon utility scale product not getting installed. So utility scale is the biggest. So when the biggest one is down, everybody's down. But everybody's not down Residential, and I thought this was the cool part, residential was up 30%.
Yeah.
And it broke a gig for the first, well, it broke a gig in prior, but it broke a gig for the first time in Q1. And Q1 is usually the slowest quarter for our industry because everybody fights to get everything in before the end of December. But it's just Q1 record setting for residential. What does that mean? What's coming? I think a lot more residential is coming. That's really what I was. If residential in this complex time is still getting installed, then it's just not going to stop. I mean, Tim, you and I, maybe we should start a residential company, and do that. Yeah, there you go. Big quarter.
I thought you already did start a residential company.
I did. This is true.
Check out Whaling City Solar. That is the John Weaver Residential Solar Company. You know, the other thing that's going on, John, is that energy prices are spiking.
Yeah.
And for the first time since 2008, it's been 12 years since we had an uptick, really, or a strong uptick in energy prices. And so
14.
Consumers are feeling, 14 years. Consumers are feeling the pinch. And of course, there's other things other commodities are inflated now. We're having inflation. But when gas prices go above $5, people really start to notice and think, oh, maybe I should consider an alternative, either a more efficient vehicle or an EV. And so this is great news that the resi solar industry is bursting at the seams. I think that will bleed into C&I. Hopefully,
Yes.
please, I am not involved in the residential industry directly. I will gladly refer my friends and colleagues to good installers that I know, whether that's here in the Midwest or elsewhere. But we need CEOs and CFOs to wake up and wake up to climate change, the pending, the unfolding crisis. It's a very slow but definitely unfolding in real time crisis, and the opportunity to save money. You know, a big facility here in the Midwest could save $250,000 a year by solarizing their facility, and that's not chump change. So I hope you're listening to this, CEOs and CFOs and facility managers of the world and energy buyers and procurement specialists. This is a great opportunity to save resources. Energy is perhaps the number 2 spend for many companies, including schools and municipalities. And I do work with those entities, as do you. And you can then take that money and pay higher salaries or do R&D or expand into new markets, develop new products. There's so many things, right? So that's how I see solar, as a fuel for innovation and expansion in other ways, as well as creating a safer, healthier future for humanity.
You mentioned since 2008 we haven't seen energy up, and one item that I've been following is the price of natural gas, and natural gas is up from $3 per million BTUs, and that price collapsed right at 2008, 2009-ish. And I kept saying constantly, oh, this isn't sustainable, and I was wrong for greater than a decade. And now, though, now that the U.S. is exporting gas, and we feel international pricing, now we're seeing the price of natural gas, which is the majority of electricity, as you pointed out earlier. Natural gas is through the roof. It's gaining. I just looked at Bloomberg's ticker for Henry Hub, and we're talking $8.91 per MMBTU, and that's 3 times higher. EIA said that they expect the pricing to stay, and they also see that the pricing of many items are going, or electricity is going up. So, 4, 5, 6%. So price of energy is going up. We're dealing with it, and it's just it's just something to watch, and obviously we're going to benefit from it. But as people who sell energy, will benefit when the prices go up. But our own lives are affected, of course. But price of gas, and I'm not even talking gasoline. Price of natural gas through the roof. That's going to have a massive effect on us.
So I want to move on and talk about the myths of solar. Unfortunately, we can't put this on screen because I can't read the story. There's
You got to click the thing.
The Gazette. The Gazette won't let me actually read the story.
Well, let me see if I can get it. It made me click a little ad thing so I could see it. So maybe I'll get it off Twitter, because I have it on Twitter too.
But I certainly am talking about solar myths almost every day. And some of the myths that I hear are that solar panels are going to poison your ground. That is a total
That's on the
myth.
list.
Solar panels are overly subsidized by the government and will not happen unless we have heavy subsidies. You and I have pretty much squashed that myth by giving statistics like the $7 trillion that the fossil fuel industry receives every year in subsidies, which is, I don't know, 8% of global GDP, something like that. And wind, solar, and storage are incentivized to a fraction of that, to a fraction like a third of a trillion. So it's just it's David and Goliath, really.
Can you see my shared tab on the screen by any chance?
Not on the broadcast, if that's what you mean.
Oh, it's too bad. Well,
Oh yeah, now I do.
okay.
Let's see.
There we go. Myth: solar panels increase flood risk.
So what are the myths?
First myth: solar panels increase flood risk, and no, the solar panels themselves don't have much of an impact. The grass underneath solar farms should be well maintained to avoid erosion. That's really what it comes down to. In every project we do, we have to consider these factors. So we have to do stormwater, pollution runoff. It's just part of every project we do. Number two, solar farms are loud. No, they're not. No noise audible 50 to 150 feet away from the edge of the array. No noise. The only noise you hear is the humming of inverters.
And there's
Three.
no noise at night.
Yeah.
I've heard some activists argue that solar is going to make noise at night, and that of course can't be true because solar doesn't run at night. Wind farms do run at night, and wind farms do also make noise. But yeah, less than when you go out on a solar farm, if it's anywhere near any other part of civilization, you hear the dogs, the sirens, and the big trucks more than you hear the solar inverters.
Yes. Myth number 3, solar panels create glare. Well, my favorite way to respond to this is solar panels are designed to absorb sunlight. So there's that. But the reality is most solar farms are photovoltaic, which uses non-reflective glass designed to absorb light in order to make energy. And the FAA, the airplane people, have said it's just fine to install solar panels near an airport. We've done the work, we've done the analysis, we're cool. So, next myth, solar panels only work on sunny days. Not really. More sunlight is produced on sunny days. However, cloudy days, particularly if the clouds are higher and thinner, didn't know that one, still produce just fine. And last, solar produces electric and magnetic fields. The first question is, solar arrays create the same level of electromagnetic fields as electrical appliances and wiring found in most houses and buildings. There you go. So, oh wait, here's another one. Measurements at 3 photovoltaic arrays in Massachusetts show off that a solar panel creates off-site electromagnetic exposures at less than 0 or 0.05 milligauss, and apparently 60 times higher is the lowest level viewed to have potential effects. So not even real effects. So those are your myths. Those are your myths today. You're not going to get electromagnetic radiation poisoning from your solar panels. If you hang out with them all day, you could get a really harsh tan, though. So, don't lay on your solar panels. They're hot.
Cool. It's a good story. I would love to continue to flesh this out and bust these myths, because this is a real challenge, and it's akin to fake news, right? But you can.
And the story that article
ahead.
came from, the image came from a story where they were talking about fake news at political solar presentations, saying, these people are lying left and right. Now we need to block out these myths. So it was clearly fake news that motivated the author of this article. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Makes me upset.
I want to talk about that high-rise project,
Yeah.
but the link is not to a building integrated project. The link is to a Alliant Energy tracker project.
Well,
I
that
love
means I
Alliant Energy,
tweeted wrong.
No worries. And
I'm going to have to go delete that tweet. Do I have images of it? Hopefully I have images of it on Twitter, because... Yeah. All right. I guess no vertical
the
building.
story that we want to find and we want to show is that high rises will become clad in solar glass,
Yes.
and because the volume of a high rise is so great relative to the roof size, rooftop solar doesn't make a lot of sense for high rise buildings. I did do a project on a hospital, which was, parts of it were 10 stories, I think, but we're only able to offset, a small percentage of the load of the hospital with a rooftop solar array. But if you have not too crowded a area around the building, so the building gets sunlight from the south, then you could put solar glass on those south or east-west facing sides and generate a lot of electricity from the cladding. And we're seeing this primarily, I think, in Europe and Asia right now. And eventually, we Americans will wake up to this opportunity as well.
I think building integrated photovoltaics on commercial structures are great. The only negative is that our buildings last so long, and we only build so many of them, that BIPV, building integrated photovoltaics, will take a long time to have an effect. I like it better in the residential market when replacing roofs. Now, this isn't like BIPV where it's your windows and your structure, but where you can lay down shingles on your roof and have real panels there. That's going to have a big effect. And I really love the concept of BIPV, of commercial structures having solar. I just wish, I wish we would just tear down every building and rebuild it, and then boom, we can do it all at once. And then we'd have, but that's not how reality works. So, but tall buildings with panels on them, it's pretty cool.
And they do periodically go in and replace the windows on high-rise buildings. They did this on the Sears Tower. They did a suite of energy upgrades, including replacing the glass. So it is totally doable to retrofit the cladding on a building.
And I think the Empire State Building did a massive upgrade of different things that included glass. Didn't include solar glass, but it had it saves like millions of dollars per year for energy. So I just thought, to complement your point there, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So let's do one more story. I don't know what story do you want to touch on?
Well, yeah, I think there's two stories down. There's one from there's a Dutch story, so we can't actually see the words, but I just pasted it there for you. But there's a neat image, and it's really about Northern Europe coming together to build a massive amount of offshore wind together, 150 gigawatts, and they're going to tie together their power grids and organize themselves with these offshore wind facilities in the North Sea. And
Danish story, not Dutch story.
Danish. Yeah, I'm actually very bad at my Northern European
And I can
folks.
actually read some of this because Danish is
Oh,
very similar to Norwegian in
cool.
written word. But
Well, now you get to read. There you go, Tim. Now you got to read it to everybody. But if you look at these countries, you have Denmark, you have Amsterdam, or you have Netherlands, and probably Belgium at the bottom, and they're all sharing their grid. They're all building a group together offshore power grid of wind turbines, 150 gigawatts worth. And just last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, we saw, I think it was the Danish grid, maybe, that was 100% wind powered for like 2 days in a row. And they were just exporting electricity to the rest of Europe, greening the rest of Europe. But that's a whole nation just being 100% covered by wind. And yeah, I think wind is awesome. I think I'm worried about it when we become super heavily dependent on it. What's going to happen when we don't have wind? And I guess that's where the hydrogen, the batteries, and what's remaining with the solar will kick in. But we have enough wind to power the Earth multiple times over, or at least for human needs at this stage. And so I'm confident that wind will become a big part of it, or a bigger part of it. And I even think it's going to happen in the U.S., like in a massive way on the coasts. Everybody's talking about offshore wind farms on the east and the west coast these days. And they're going to look just like this. They're going to have interconnections from different states, different grids. They're even talking about an offshore power grid to go from the north to the south to connect all these wind farms together so that these these developers can sell their electricity into different markets. And just big, giant wind turbines. They're cool.
yeah, the take home that I see here is that these coastal countries like Denmark that have leaned into wind technology. Denmark is, definitely a leader in wind technology. I think Vestas was a Danish company originally,
Maybe.
and they're gonna export that energy because they have a huge coast. They're gonna be able to harvest wind energy and then export it to the rest of Northern Europe, and that just makes good sense. And we'll see this up and down the East Coast, and it's coming to California now.
Yep.
Offshore wind is coming. Offshore wind is more difficult in California because it's deeper water, but
Yeah.
it's coming. That is the
I s-
advantage the Northern Europeans have, is that North Sea is quite shallow, at least when you're within 100 miles of shore or something like that. Quite shallow. Um, that whole landmass was all connected. Like Great Britain was connected to the continental Europe some, I don't know, 100,000 years ago or something.
Wow, is that recent?
And yeah, that's how England got so populated with crazy humans and animals that then mostly went extinct. But anyway, we digress. So I don't know, John. I want to wrap up the show. I'm
Great.
super psyched to go to Midwest Solar in 2
Yep.
weeks, or just over a week, and I'm curious if you have any forward-looking events on your calendar. Are you going to anything?
Nothing for a bit. I gotta calm down and get my life in order with my new place, new bike, riding around town. I got caught in the rain today, so gotta start planning out rain jacket wearing more. The only show I have on my potential is SPI in September. Otherwise, nothing planned just yet.
That's going to be in Anaheim, right?
I believe so. Yes, yes.
I should mention that our listeners can get a discount at Midwest Solar Expo. Use the discount code CPH15 for a 15% discount. And
CPH 15.
you have a good radio voice.
Radio.
How can our listeners find you, Mr. Commercial Solar Guy?
Check out my website, commercialsolarguy.com. Send us a contact us email. That's the best way. Or you can send me a text message at 508-9-SOLAR. Or is it 79? I don't even know what my main number is. Don't dial that number. Never mind that. Go to our website, commercialsolarguy.com. My phone number does have solar in it, though. Has the word solar.
Or tweet at John at Solar in Mass. And I'm Tim Montague. You can reach me on Twitter, TG Montague, on LinkedIn, and on my website, cleanpower.group. Check out all of our content, cleanpower.group/podcast. Give it a rating and a review. That's how other people will find the content. And that's really what we're here for. And other than bringing you great clean energy and energy transition news. With that, I will say, see you next week, John, and let's grow solar and storage. I'm Tim Montague. Have a great day.